Welcome to the Brand Clarity Podcast, hosted by Visions to Images and Susie Libertor. The Brand Clarity Podcast highlights several different topics, including entrepreneurship, franchises, and digital marketing trends. Visions to Images helps corporations and franchises with their branding, website, paid advertising, and digital marketing. Hello, everybody. Today I have on the podcast Anthony Farrell. He is the founder of Complete Pest Solution, and I'm super excited. He's a franchisor, and I met him through a mutual friend, and he's in Cleveland area-ish, all over Northeast Ohio, and has many, many locations. So I'm super excited to chat with him and get to know more about him and what he's excited for. So, Anthony, tell us how you got started in the franchise field, how you got started with your business. Give us some background.
So I'm a third generation pest control guy. So my grandfather had a company in New Jersey, and my father started one here in Youngstown back in 1980. So I grew up in the field. I worked my way from truck stalker. So I would go on the weekends and help my dad stock the trucks and change the oils in the trucks. And I started there. And then I worked my way into doing a route, and then into inside sales and then outside sales. I was a secretary for a while, answering phones and scheduling technicians. Worked my way up into management with his company. Was pretty successful with that. We went from 12 technicians to 30 technicians under my watch. So we became a pretty decently sized pest control operator for Youngstown, Ohio. As I got older and started doing things, I wanted some different things than working 17 hours a day. So I chose to kind of break off and decide, okay, let's give this a run on my own. So I took over a company that was kind of upside down and turned that one around in 2008. And then from there, we built up from 2008. In 6 months, we hired our first technician. Then after that, we hired a secretary. So we kind of went the route of the technician took my route. I went in the office, started answering phones, started building another route. And then I went out and did a route, and then we hired a secretary. 2012, we had a massive fire that took out all of our trucks.
Oh no!
Supplies, equipment, everything. That was a little heartbreaking. 4 years into starting a business, and you just lose everything. So kind of recovering from that in about 2017, 2018, I really started to want to expand our brand. We are a full service pest control company. So there's not too many companies out there that do all inclusive services. So wildlife, pest control, mosquito control, termite control. You normally have one or you have the other. So you either have a wildlife company, that's all they do. And then, or you have pest control, that's all they do. So with our brand, we are able to do both. So that gives something to our customers, a little bit more of an at ease feeling that if they do have a problem, they don't have to call, 2 or 3 different companies. We do take a lot of customers because of that, because we can offer all the services that they need under one umbrella. So I wanted to expand. I wanted to get this brand, kind of moving a little bit more outside the Northeast Ohio area. But I'm a dad, I'm a husband, so I didn't want to be traveling all the time and kind of having that relationship with my family. So I'm like, so how do we do this better? How do we expand the brand and get the brand out there and grow without having to sacrifice a lot of time on the road away from home? And so started looking into those ways, and then franchising started kind of creeping into the fold. And then I kind of like pushed it to the side for a little while, and then it kind of crept back in. And then I pushed it to the side because it's an expensive way to do it.
But the long-term effect is beneficial by no comparison. So yes, it's expensive to start off, but it's like once you get to where you need to be, it's amazing. But it doesn't happen overnight. So
right. So about 2019 is when I really kind of went full bore into signing up with a franchising company to help do the FTD, the FA, the operations manuals, and all that stuff. So we started selling at the end of 2019. So that's when we started selling franchises. Our first sale was in I think it was the end of 2019. I think that our first sale was like right away. And then we had 2020
Oh,
and good old COVID.
yeah.
But we still sold units in COVID. Like
Right.
so that was kind of cool, you know. We sold one unit before COVID. I think we sold a unit after COVID. But because of the way that this industry performs in that arena, so in 2008, we had one of the worst recessions that this country's ever felt. It wasn't a depression, but it was a recession. And I built this company in 2008. My father built his company in 1980, which again, in the Youngstown area, everybody was moving out. Nobody was moving in. So there was a big recession in the 80s also when he started his company. So there's some funny correlations between when he started and when I started, you know, two recessions, you know, two guys starting a company in recessions. It's, you know, in the same family. It's kind of fun little trivia on that one. So during COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen with our industry, right? Because we go into people's homes, we go into hospitals, we go into schools, we go into
Right.
restaurants. Like you got all these things where we enter into the areas that we're not allowed to go into during COVID. So it's like, so what's gonna happen? The senators of the states and our local chapters of like Ohio Pest Management Association, National Pest Management Association, went in and started really kind of working because, you know, again, we're pest control. Nobody thinks of pest control as like this thing, but when you actually get down to the brass tacks of it, pest control is public safety,
Mm.
public health and safety.
Right.
People don't, it's not viewed that way because normally the termites, it's not really a health issue. You know, it's not a public issue. It ruins your house, yes. But when you start thinking about like mice, rats, roaches, those three alone spread disease.
Mm.
I don't think of the bubonic plague. What spread the bubonic plague? It was the rats and the mosquitoes.
Right.
So now you
Yeah.
get into mosquito control. They spread disease. That helped this industry kind of dive into more of a scientific, what are we really? So we
Right.
are a public health service. So we were deemed critical essential, like not even just essential, like critical essential. And that kind of makes sense because if you think about it, like when you think of places like New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago,
Right.
you're shutting down these restaurants. There's no activity.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to take over? Well, you know, unfortunately, we know like New York City, it's all over the news all the time. They're full of rats.
Right.
So when you shut a restaurant down, there's no more cleaning going on, no more activity. Those rats are going to end up moving into that space. They're going to take over. So now you have a public health crisis on your hands because now you have rodent feces and urine in your establishments where food is prepped. Same thing with roaches. Roaches, they spread disease. So with that knowledge, it kind of armed our industry and it armed me because, you know, our company grew 55% during that time period. It armed me to say, okay, yes, pest control is not that shiny, bright, beautiful object to buy. But when you get down to it, when you start a business, and this is, again, this is my opinion. I don't know about how other people view things, but if I'm going to go invest my hard earned capital into something, I want to make sure that that industry and that business is going to be able to be scalable. You know, it showed me that yes, restaurants are one of the most bought franchises out there. They're shiny, blah,
Right.
blah. But look what happened during COVID.
Sure.
The restaurants that did not have some kind of drive-through delivery,
Right.
they pretty much disappeared. So you know, these poor people invested all this money and they were told to shut your business down. If that happens again, our industry doesn't get shut down. We just keep going. We grow. It's a smart investment done right, low overhead, very scalable. There's a lot of money in pest control. I mean, two of the top companies are doing over $1 billion a year each. Orkin does about 2 billion, Terminex does about 2.4. So you have two large companies in this industry doing billions of dollars. There's a reason for that. And then, you know, you can scale it all the way down and, you know, you got other companies that are really close to catching them. But this is a beautiful industry. It's going to grow. I think what last year, 2023, it was slated to do like 18 billion or 19 billion for the year. And by the time we hit 2025, it's going to do 31 billion or 26 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So the growth
Yeah.
in that sector for a home service for something that's not nice and shiny is pretty awesome.
Hey there, I want to interrupt this episode with a quick message. If you're listening to this podcast episode and want to learn about branding your franchise or small business, then go to brandingbridge.com. That's branding-bridge.com.
I think as we continue down these paths of kind of these cycles that happen,
Right.
the pest control field is going to become more and more important to people's health. Even these, quote unquote murder hornets, the Asian hornets. Like,
Mhm.
is there a time that they may make it over here and establish themselves here? Yes. The Africanized honeybee did. You got these with all these movements of parts and things being shipped over from other countries and into onto our soils and all the world travel that opens up a whole other world for bug infestations in different places. So that's why I decided franchising.
Yeah.
Growth, it's a great business.
Yeah.
I get to use my skills and my knowledge to help other people hopefully go start building a legacy for themselves and plant their
Absolutely.
flag, say,
Right.
this is what I've done, and I'm proud of what I've done. Um,
Absolutely.
I was just talking to my wife the other night, and it's just like when you look at it, it's like, wow, like we went from here to here, and that's pretty awesome. To be able to look back on a career and say, where'd you start at? Where are you at
Yeah.
now? And you start looking at it, you're like, man, yeah, there's been some ups and downs, just like anybody
Right.
else that has been in business. But the success, you're just like, wow. So currently we have 12 locations kind of spread throughout the United States, mostly on the eastern side right now. And we're looking to grow. We're looking for other people that want to come in, buy into a brand that does everything. You have multiple revenue streams. I always say you can take my company and say, okay, if you want, you can split it down the middle and say, here's pest control and here's wildlife. And I actually have two technicians that do nothing but wildlife. They do cross over to help out, but
Sure.
their main focus is wildlife. And then we're going to have two or three technicians that are going to do just pest control. So you can kind of split it right down the middle and say, man, like, you have a wildlife income and then you have a pest control income. So you're slated at saying, I'm buying this brand and I'm buying it and I'm having two companies in one. So you're essentially getting a steal. You're getting two for the price of one. In essence, that's why I decided to franchise. I want the growth. I want the brand to be out there. I want to be able to still be present in my family's life and in my life here, in my local company, because what corporate does makes or breaks what the franchisees do. So if we can
Yeah.
develop and get things really good at corporate and then push it out to our franchisees, I feel that really gives us a nice relationship with our franchisees, knowing that we're not going to push something out unless we tried it, we
Absolutely.
invested into it, and then if it doesn't work, then they didn't have to put money into something that didn't work.
So, what is your goal for expansion? How many, like, what are you trying to reach? What locations?
Everybody always asks, Anthony, if you had to do it back in 2008 all over again,
Yeah.
what is the one thing that you would do? I would have picked my family up and moved south and started a company in the south. That's what I would have done. So I really would love to have a bunch of locations in Florida, Arizona, Texas, because I feel like in those areas, the growth and the scalability of pest control becomes 10 times the speed than in Ohio.
Right.
So, for example, like this year, we had a mild winter. The beginning of March came, it warmed up. Like we're talking 70, 75. So all of our initial insect bursts happened. Yeah, it's been 20. It's been almost colder now for the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks than it was all winter.
I know. Yeah.
So any termite swarmers that came out and fluttered that season could be done. So now all of a sudden that just depleted our termite season. We're
Mhm.
down in the south. In south, it's an anomaly to have weather like this. It's normally still very warm, still very like, I know Texas went through some weird anomaly
Right.
stuff by getting snow down there, but again, the snow showed up, the snow went away by the next afternoon. So it's not sustainable cold like it is here. So your growth down there is far greater than in any north state. So it would be cool to go down the coast, and that would be awesome. But I see more of our sales being in that southern region across the bottom of the United States, kind of coming up into the middle. I do feel like we'll have more in Pennsylvania, in the states kind of touching Ohio and Pennsylvania, just because of once we start gaining more traction, that brand name will be somewhat known, going into Kansas and those middle ground states, like maybe, but I think a lot of it's going to be South.
Yeah. That sounds accurate. I mean, I think that what you're saying makes complete sense. What would be one piece of advice you would give somebody if they are looking to get into franchising?
Make sure you have a lot of capital to back you.
Yep, franchising is not cheap.
The way that I did it, and some people, some that I've talked to and gotten advice from afterwards and whatever, because you always go into it listening to this, and then all of a sudden you're into it, and then you start finding out different people in the arena. So I'm always one that if you're not learning, then you're not going to succeed. You got to always,
Yeah,
you got to get differing opinions, you got to get differing advice, and then you gather that information and you try to apply the good bits that you take out. So I have been told that, I put the cart before the horse. We hired a whole admin team to
yep,
support our franchisees. Again, whether that was a mistake or it wasn't, I feel that you cannot have franchises without some support. As the owner,
absolutely,
you can't do it all.
100%. No, yeah, you can't.
You can't do it all. Like, it's still crazy because some still call me before they call their support team. It's like you got to start using that. Like, I can't be everything. That's expensive because you try to get the median salary for a franchise developer. You try to get the
Right,
median salary for a corporate trainer, and then you try to kind of like in your corporate side, you try to use them also to help you on the other side, so that way you can kind of balance out the salaries, but it's still very expensive. And
it is.
then to go sell franchises, how do you do it? How do you go find people to buy your brand? Well, you got to join consulting firms. You might want to do lead gen. You might want to do Google AdWords. So there's all these things that you got to filter through. Then your average consulting firm charges about $1,000 a month just to be on their team.
Right,
They take half to 30% of your franchise fee.
right.
So your franchise fees, if you're 50,000, yeah, they take 25. Well, now you got 25 grand to work with. Well, if you only sell one for the year, that 25 grand goes out the door real quick because you got to pay back the other company that's supporting you. And then you're like, oh, well, we're just perpetuating this cycle. So build your support staff, but have the capital behind you to do it. Make sure you have that money. And if you're going to do it, and it's going to be a substantial amount. I think between the FTD, the FA, all that introduction, that's about 50 grand. And then that's just off the rip.
Mhm.
You're going to have almost 500 grand or whatever sitting there to do this the right way, to have your support staff, to,
Absolutely.
to be able to afford the advertising, to start finding
Right,
franchises.
right.
Um,
So many times people say, "Oh, I don't have the cash to franchise," and I'm like, "Well, if you don't have the cash, like, rethink your plan because it's not cheap and you can't take the easy way because it's not gonna work."
so that'd be my thing. And then, but enjoy the ride at the same time. Like get your capital together, get
Yeah.
your team together, and enjoy the ride. You're gonna have a spurt of great. I think last year we sold 3 units,
Mhm.
but it was all at the beginning of the year. From like
Right, you don't know
August,
further, yeah.
August to now, we haven't sold one. So great, you sold three last year, yay, woohoo! But
Right.
February, April, and May, like that was it. And then from like June on, it was like, what's happening here? Like the well dried up. You got to take the good with the bad,
For
and
sure.
and then as an emerging brand, you're new to everybody. They have no clue who you are.
Right.
So when you go with these consulting firms, they have their book. They know what works. So if you get to a consultant that has, so in our industry, if they have a Truly Nolan, Mosquito Authority, and then us, okay, well, they're not going to show those three brands. They're going to pick one brand in that industry to show. More than likely, it's going to be Truly Nolan or Mosquito Authority. It's not going to be us. We're brand new.
Right.
So you gotta you
Agreed.
gotta you gotta have that patience to work into that firm, and then hopefully you get a consultant that does show your brand. You do sell. It's a good positive experience because now that consultant now will say, all right, Complete Pest Solutions or whatever brand you have, they're good to work with. They're responsive. They were easy to deal with when it came to getting our client. in the training, all this stuff. So then you start building that reputation with that consultant.
Right. Absolutely. Agreed. It's so important. Well, thank you, Anthony, for coming on. If people want to learn more, how can they find you?
Our website, completefranchising.us or completepestsolution.com, whichever one.
Okay.
And then I'm on LinkedIn, so you can message me on LinkedIn underneath my name, Anthony Farrell. Facebook, you can look up our company, Complete Pest Solutions Franchising.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening in on today's Brand Clarity episode with Susie Liberatore. 2 things. First and foremost, please, if you liked this episode, please subscribe and leave some positive reviews. Also, don't forget to sign up for Stop Sending Your Customers to the Competition and get my insider secrets to compelling branding that converts. You can find that at branding-bridge.com. It's a free workbook for you to check out right now, all of the branding techniques and strategies that I use for my paying clients.